Hey guys, Youngblood with you today for some more Hossin content. But before I actually get into that, I wanted to give you guys a quick apology. I said I'd be getting you more content quicker than ASAP. However, life just flat out got in the way. So my apologies for that. Just to let you know what's going on. Work's been crazy busy the last couple months. August marks the beginning of our new fiscal year, which means that I've been crazy busy preparing for that. On top of that, I'm in the process of buying and selling a home, so I'm doing a bunch of repairs and setting up appointments, and it's been really just very hectic. And on top of that, I'm going on vacation starting on Tuesday, also meaning that I've got a lot going on. So, wanted to let you guys know why I was late on this content, but without further ado, let's go ahead and just jump right on into it. Now, when we talk about Hossin, yes, it's got a new look to it, but I don't want you guys to feel like you're going to be completely lost if you haven't been over here yet, because the base designs, for the most part, have been copied and pasted from their current game files and status. So, what does that mean? Towers look the same, spawn rooms look about the same, their exits look the same. What's really different is going to be the terrain. For the most part, like we expected to see, there's a lot of trees, there's a lot of swampy areas, etc. But the places that you're going to see enemies are fairly similar to what you've been seeing to this point. So you're not going to be totally lost when you first jump in. Now, the first things you're going to notice that are going to be strange to adjust to are the paths people can take in the quote-unquote open when they're not in buildings. There's a lot of little valleys and watery areas. There's a lot of trees that you can kind of climb on. There's also hills that'll let you get over walls. Really what we're seeing is kind of a combination of the changes that we've seen on Esamir with all the walls that were put in, almost some of the moats that have been kind of dug out, and it has some aspects similar to Marish as well. The reason I say that is specifically based on the pure number of trees that there are, and the fact that driving isn't nearly as easy as it is on Esamir or Endar. You've really got to choose your routes a little bit more carefully, especially until you're more comfortable and familiar with what you're actually looking at. Now, when we're talking about driving, there's a big positive and a big negative. Just like it is on Amerish, there's very limited pathways that you can take. Now, a benefit is the roads are wider, meaning you're going to have less traffic jams. You can typically move around your people a little bit better. The downside is there's less smaller roads for you to take. Now, there's a lot of kind of open areas that, harassers will be successful with, lightnings might have a little bit better luck with, but your main battle tank columns are really going to have to stick to the main service roads in order to really be effective and to avoid getting locked up in terrain of some sort. I'm a fan because I like that it kind of directs it. It's almost an indirect lattice. However, it seems to really limit your options a little bit, which I'm not crazy about. That's one of the reasons why I personally don't really care for lattice, because I like the ability to be creative in your strategy, and not being able to do that is kind of frustrating. So I see harassers playing a much bigger role here, maybe galaxy drops being successful as well. The days of being able to line up a bunch of main battle tanks and surprise an enemy are long gone, and this really just kind of reinforces that. Now, when we're actually playing on Hossin, what we're actually fighting and playing over is the core of the map. You're looking at about the middle, roughly 60% of the map. All the outlying territories are currently offline. I think what we're seeing here is based on the SOE live event that's currently going on. They're demoing Hossin there for people to actually see and play, and probably with the servers they took with them and delegated to this certain task, probably could only really handle about 60% of this map. So that's what's currently live in Hossin, and I think what they're seeing at SOE live as well. I'm currently still in St. Louis. I'm not in Vegas. However, I think that's what's happening, so don't expect to jump in and see the whole map. We're currently using makeshift warp gates right kind of in the middle for all three factions. Now, there's a lot of stuff that's been added that's pretty cool, and there's like fallen down trees that make tunnels. You're about to see a big drawbridge that would make for some pretty epic harasser jumps. That being said, you need to have turbo equipped, I'm guessing, at least for the flash, because you can see here it's about to be epic fail 101. But there's some nifty little things that have been implemented into this. Now, I'm about to show you some water footage, and you can tell as I'm driving through it, the water's not displacing. There's not any ripples. That mechanic just hasn't been built into the game, so don't expect to see big splashes or bullets hitting the water making splashes or waves or anything like that. About the only place where the water really comes into play is over at the dam, in which point if you drive into it you pretty much explode. I don't have footage of this, but the first time I was on, I flew right over the dam and watched a bunch of vehicles drive into it and blow up and die. So I wouldn't recommend trying that. I haven't done it on foot yet, so it's interesting to see what the infantry actually does. But water right now is just purely visual. There's not any real mechanics that are attached to it. Now, when we start talking about base design, the most probably notorious one that you've heard about so far is this dam that's at this location. And it's really actually pretty cool. You've got water that's in the middle of the points and everything around the outside of it. There's a flat drop-off, as you can see at the end of this, as you would expect to see at a dam. And there's some unique, cool bases like this that you don't really see in other places around Araxis. So I'm pretty excited about these new features. Now, when we start talking about biolabs and amp stations, for the most part, they're very similar. And I'm going to throw up some video now for you to actually take a look at. But when we talk about amp stations, they look almost exactly the same. There's a couple gigantic trees in some of the corners on the inside walls that are going to make for interesting places. When we talk about biolabs, it actually becomes a little bit more interesting because, well, I mean, in one of the spawn points, you actually come out and you're flying through a tree right immediately. When you're flying and dogfighting, and sometimes you try and go underneath a biolab to avoid some enemy fighters, there's a lot more trees now. So flying in general at low altitudes is going to be a little bit more challenging. And around bases that have a lot of trees, it naturally kind of separates the air game and the ground game. It's a good thing for pilots because survivability probably dramatically increases. It's a bad thing for pilots because you're also not going to be able to engage the ground targets as much. So it's kind of an interesting balance. I think I kind of like it just because it's unique from anything that we have. But it's something you'll need to keep in mind. It's going to change your playstyle a little bit playing on Hossin. Now, with these changes, what we're going to see is a dramatic separation of skill. You're going to have people that love to ground pound, and I like to do it sometimes. And when I do it more normally to help my team succeed. Sometimes it's just to earn a bunch of certs, but whatever it may be. Regardless, in order to be really successful in this, at least with the parts of the map that we can see now, the places with the big combat are going to require a little bit more skill. And with the trees that overhang, you're going to really need to make sure that you're not relying too much on your spacebar flying, which is something that I've preached to you guys in the earlier videos over and over. It's how you go faster, it's how you stay nimble. But if you use it a little bit too much, you're going to be running into shit because it's hanging over your head. Now, you can see here, I'm just zooming through the terrain, kind of enjoying the sights and checking out Hossin, and for the most part, everything seems to play out well. Until I come up here, hit something in the air. I don't know what the hell I hit, but you can tell there's going to be some things that you need to work out. I'm guessing it's that fern tree right there, but nope, I didn't even reach it. I still don't know what I hit. But you'll see that there's going to be some benefits of flying in first person and in third person. You're probably going to need to be bouncing between the two because you need to see where you're at, but you also need to see exactly where your craft can fit through. It's kind of a challenging balance. Now, when we start talking about ground vehicles, I've already kind of mentioned the roads and the different pathways you can take and how I think harassers are going to be more successful. But infantry has a lot of different paths they can take. Here, I'm just jumping over rocks and hills and climbing down trees, and there's all sorts of different pathways that you can take. Now, let me preface this by saying, in general, a heavily contested biolab is a bad place to try and pull a main battle tank from because there's enemy main battle tanks that are waiting to engage you. That being said, this is particularly bad. You can see there's a man-made wall here. There's hills and random outshoots of trees and roots and all sorts of stuff that really confines the ways that you can go in a vehicle. However, there's about infinite places that an infantry can sit. So heavy assaults with rockets, engineers with mana turrets. There's a lot of kill zones that are going to be unfortunate for ground vehicles, which really makes me think that something like a harasser that's fast and nimble is going to be much more successful on this continent than something like a main battle tank. One of the other things I wanted to talk about was the implementation of base shields. And if you remembered, I'm not actually a fan, and I'm still not really a fan because, the content like this is already separating air and ground so much. I don't think you need something that the developers are purposely adding in to take them out of it. That being said, the base shields have some changes that I think are a step in the right direction. First off, an enemy ESF, or I presume Galaxy or Liberator, I've only tested it with a Reaver, can now pass through an enemy shield, which is fine. I think that's the right thing to do. The only thing the shield stops is actually your bullets, and I've tested this with a enemy terminal. So basically, what we're seeing is air is no longer going to be able to engage the ground. Now, I saw a enemy shield that looked to be disabled, and I flew over for a couple minutes trying to figure out if it actually had some form of generator that was actually down there that was maybe disabled, but I couldn't see it from the air, so I can't confirm that. I'll try and do a little bit more research and get back to you on it. So if that's the case, if you can actually take down an enemy shield or base generator, I think that's a good thing. I think that's a positive for balance because it encourages team play. Infantry runs in, they disable the shield, and all of a sudden your air can support. That's the way it really should be. So I think that's a great change if that's actually what's happening here. So just take note of that, play around with it and see what you think, but I think it struck a much better balance to this point, and it feels like it should be. Now, I don't want this video just to drag on forever, so I want to finish up with a couple points, and I'm going to start out with what I think is actually what we should expect out of Hossin, and then I want to kind of move into some common tips and courtesy on playing on the test server. Now, how do I think Hossin is going to play out as a continent? I'm excited for Hossin because it's something we don't currently have. Like I've mentioned, I think it's a pretty good blend of what we have on Esamir and some of the aspects of Amerish. Now, as a pilot, is this my favorite continent? No, not in the slightest. I think the air game and the ground game are separated a little bit too much. That being said, it's a new element. I'm excited to see how it plays out. And keep in mind, we're only playing with about 60% of the map. When we add in the outliers, maybe air can play a lot bigger role out there while the infantry fights over the inside. We'll just have to see how that all works out. Now, I think, and again, it's all speculation because there's not really big fights going on, but to me, what I see here is, as far as land vehicles, harassers being very successful, lightnings being moderately successful, and main battle tanks having a very limited role. As far as the air goes, I think galaxies are actually going to be very important. I think a galaxy, like on Amerish, is going to help you cover a lot of ground and get to places that would be difficult to get to with a Sunderer. I envision Liberators being successful, kind of limiting the traffic of enemy vehicles, but it's going to be hard for them to farm kills at bases that are currently being engaged. The same thing goes for ESFs. I think you see a role change for them. I think what you see is fighters fighting fighters and fighters engaging other things like galaxies that are trying to drop. So it's an interesting dynamic, and I'm excited to see how that all plays out. As far as infantry goes, light assaults are going to be your best friend on this map because there's a lot of walls and hills and places that you can get to with other classes, but it takes time. The ability to jump jet over walls and jump jet up hills and get onto trees and place good spawn beacons are all things that are going to be critical on this map, and light assaults, especially as a squad leader, are going to be tremendously helpful. Overall, Hossin is a beautiful continent, and it's giving us a lot of things that we don't have in other places. So I'm excited to see this get into the main servers, and excited to see what you guys think as you play more. Now, as far as common courtesy goes, a lot of people are purely getting on here to see Hossin for themselves. There's kind of been some undisclosed truces and ceasefires, and there's not a whole lot of battles that are getting on. So don't expect to get on and see what a battle flow is like. Now, with that in mind, there's some common courtesy tips that I think we can all put into place. One would be try not to repair shield generators, and I did this earlier, and somebody called me out on it, and all of a sudden I felt like a dick. But for people that want to get through and see a base, if I repair a shield generator, they're not going to be able to get through. So, sightsee a little bit. For me, I was flying around because that's the most efficient way for me to do this. And there were several fighters that I didn't engage, and I purposely let them fire at me first. And they did, and then I engaged them back, and it was battle as usual. But I let them do the first shooting because I'm under the assumption that everybody is here just to see what this continent's all about, because we've been fighting over the same 3 continents for the last almost a year. So it's exciting for everybody now. So maybe go into it, yell to see what people actually are doing. If you see people fighting each other, jump into the fight by all means. Get involved, have a good time, and see how things play out. But in a lot of situations, that's not going on. People of different factions are talking, and everybody's excited about the continent, and they're kind of discussing amongst each other. So if you see 2 guys of different factions just sitting there, don't light up the other guy. They're obviously not there for battle. Just let them be and move on. So that's just kind of my public service announcement, and just saying, everybody be chill, enjoy the new place, and we can all move on. So I'm going to try and get you guys a lot more Hossin content. I'm going to spend some more time here, and as the novelty of it wears off, there's going to be more battles, and I'll be able to give you more empirical evidence. But for now, those are my impressions of this map and how I expect it all to play out. Like I mentioned, I'm going on vacation next week, so don't expect a whole lot of videos. I know there's been some changes to ESFs that you're all excited to hear about, and I plan to talk about it big time. So expect a video on that as well. I'm just not sure when it's actually going to be available since I am out of town. So thanks for watching, guys. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later. Take care.